All right, I hope you guys are doing good today. Hey, I had a recent situation here and I thought I'd help you guys out a little bit because it is somewhat confusing on the Highwood website. I mean, they tell you exactly what to do, and somehow I think I made a mistake. But the whole story here is that I just got this guitar refretted, the 57 reissue, and I specifically told the luthier, I said, I want those frets as flat as you can get them on the edge so that I don't lose any real estate on the top of the fret, because Strats have a tendency to want to slip off, right? So I get there and he said, well, I couldn't have done it without you cutting your hand, so there's a slight bevel there. Well, of course, they slip off a little bit when I'm playing. Not too bad, but still, anything is not acceptable to me. And what I decided to do was, well, I had the widest Highwoods on here that I could get, 11.2 millimeter. And I thought, man, if I could just squeeze these in a little bit. So I started looking at my vintage Strat. This is a 62, but it's got mostly 66 parts on it. And the one thing that I thought was misleading on the Highwood website was that it says, note, if your guitar saddles have spaces in between the saddles, then you might not have the right saddles on your guitar. And I think I saw that when I first ordered the 11.2s. And so I went with the larger size, the 11.2. And when I started looking at my vintage saddles, see, these are the vintage saddles, there are spaces between. You can see the spaces. And I thought, well, the good thing about these is if you do want to move your E's in a little bit, you can move them on top of the saddles. But with the Highwood groove, that string's going to be in one place forever, which is great. I love that. But I thought, okay, for this Strat, if I get the narrower saddles, I can maybe squeeze everything in just a tad. That's all I need to make that keep from slipping. And I noticed that, maybe Fender designed these things that way to give them a little slack. I think a lot of people may think that when they fit solid together that it gives the bridge a little more sustain maybe, and I haven't come to that conclusion yet because I've got to put the narrower ones on there and try it out. I mean, none of the vintage Strats have them all tight together. I want to say when Leo Fender went to G&L that his bridge was very tight together, and maybe he thought that was important. I'm not so sure. I think these gaps are perfectly fine, but I just wanted to help you because on the Highwood website, it doesn't really say vintage Strats. It says S-type or Japanese type or, American Strat, but nothing about vintage. So this is specifically about vintage. But if you follow their instructions and measure your saddles, and I'm going by millimeters, that's probably your best way to get the correct size if you have the original saddles on your guitar. And I think what happened to me, see, this is 10.8 and 10.8 millimeter, and Highwood makes the next size down is a 10.8. And so it's just, theirs is 10.8 exactly. The vintage 1964, this is a 64 saddle, it's 10.8, 8.1. So that's what I should have bought. That makes it simple, but just ignore that statement on there that says if you have gaps between, then you may not have the correct saddles on your guitar. That's what confused me. This is a Callaham, and this is what I think was on that guitar when I went to order the Highwoods. and it is 11.3. They're actually on the wide side. It's not vintage correct, if you ask me. I don't know why, if you're going to go vintage, you don't stick with the vintage dimensions. Either way, be sure you measure the width of your saddle. So when I measured this and got it at 11.3, I ordered 3 sets, and I've got the set on the green one over here, and I've also got a set on my black 1964 Strat, and I don't slip off there, so they didn't bother me there. But in this case, we're going to see if it helps with the slippage. All right, I'm going to put them on, and I'll be right back. I just want to give you a close-up here of the bridge. Very tight, no gaps, and it really does look like everything lines up perfectly. But let's see what happens when I put the vintage correct size on there. All right, this is just for a straight down visual on the 11.2 Highwoods, just so we can compare the spacing. Especially at the neck. See, it's pretty close. It looks close. It's hard to get the perspective with the camera lens. See how and another thing you can actually do is tilt your neck one way or another if you want to move the strings all one direction to one side. And I've pretty much got it perfectly centered as well as I can right now. All right, that made all the difference in the world. And as you can see, it really doesn't look like there's gaps in there, but I don't know if you can see that string is tilted in just a little bit. The ease, so you can squeeze them in and get the strings way better aligned. Gives you a little extra real estate here. We'll go with the vintage size on most Strats, I would say, 10.8. The wide ones, if your original saddles on your guitar show 11.2, then get the 11.2s. But the Callahams are too wide, and everything's too wide as far as I can tell. And the 10.8s are perfect. You can squeeze those babies in a little bit. There's still no gaps, but it gives you a better alignment. Unfortunately, I'm going to go buy 2 more sets of the smaller size because I got the wrong size. I've got these on a 64 Strat, and I just would rather have that extra little space on the E's. So I'll talk to you guys later.